Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Red Path. This is the second part in our kind of get to know us video series, I guess. So today we're going to be chatting with Jamie about his origins, a little bit about himself, what got him into the World Eaters, and what led to the creation of the fantastic content production train that is The Red Path. The unceasing train of production.
The pain train.
The pain train, yeah, for sure. So yeah, we're going to dive into that. So stay tuned and yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so here we are sitting down for a chat. And so this is like kind of to mark our 2,000 points milestone for subscribers. So again, massive shout out to everyone who's subbed to the channel. We really appreciate you all. And today we're going to be hearing a little bit about Jamie, about his personal life a little bit, and kind of what got him into the hobby, what led it to World Eaters, and the birth of the channel. So yeah, Jamie, start us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Basically, I'm Jamie, for anyone who doesn't know. I'm obviously British, not Canadian or Australian or anything else, but I do live in the United States. I've moved here about 15 years ago. My wife is from here. So one of us had to move somewhere and I moved here. I don't know. Basically, my education, I guess, is more interesting than my career, because my career, I work in a IT room, and I hate computers, so it's not that much fun. But I studied philosophy at college, and that was honestly, that will kind of tie in to my World Eater stuff a bit later, strangely enough. But the reason I got into philosophy was because when I was a kid, and I won't talk about the Warhammer stuff, but I'm a nerd, always have been a complete nerd, right? When I was a kid, really into video games, especially RTS games. I played, this is going to be before your time, I'm guessing, Dara, but the original Red Alert and the original Command and Conquer.
Oh, no, I've played Red Alert. Right. Yeah.
So, well, do you remember Dune 2, which was I think the first Westwood Studios game, RTS? Probably
I don't
not.
think so. No.
So this was on an old 386, which is the old like pre-Intel PCs, right? And it was an RTS, very much in the same vein as Command and Conquer and Red Alert, but our computer didn't have a port for a mouse, so I beat that entire game using just keyboard controls, individually selecting units and moving them. And
it's like, you know, those videos where people are like, oh, I beat like Dark Souls with Guitar Hero guitar or something.
Yeah.
You were the original.
It was ridiculous. Like, looking back, it's like, oh, there's no way I'd do that now, but it was so much fun. And I just fell in love with strategy games, the concept of, applying your strategy, your tactics, your brain to solve these like real-time problems and to try and do it well. So from there, once we upgraded our home PC, I'm a teenager, about 13 years old or something, we got a slightly better PC, and this is in the early days of the internet, the old 28.8 kilobyte modem with all the sound effects and everything, and got Command and Conquer, really enjoyed it. But then just as I got into it, Red Alert dropped. And I was like, man, this shit's great. I love this game. And at the time, as like an edgy 13-year-old, I'm like, oh, Soviet Union, this is interesting. It's okay, everyone, don't worry, I'll get political. But we all have that moment in our teenage years where we start, being interested in politics and the wider world. It's part of literal human growth, right? And that was kind of my interest in it. At the same time, I was also getting into music, and this is also an influence on everything. So a friend of my brother's brought over the cassette for Power Slave by Iron Maiden, and my younger brother's friend. So I'm 13, he's 11, was like, hey, you should check this out. I'm like, okay, whatever, because I was into like rave and hardcore as much as anything, like just whatever was popular at the time. And he played this song, and it was a Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. I was like, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. So a combination of that, listening to Iron Maiden and getting into RTS games, Red Alert specifically, got me really interested in reading, right? Like I was like too cool to read. I was like, whatever, I don't give a shit. And then I started reading books, like lots of books. I'd literally went to the library and got a copy of the poem, The Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, to read it. And then I started getting more interested in history again, because of like looking at World War II with, the Soviets, the Nazis and stuff. And plus, I guess I was learning it in school at the same time as well, right? But I developed an actual interest in military history, the kind of arts, literature as an art form, and stuff like that. And as I grew up, these things began to influence me more and more, both music and gaming and history. And as I got older, I was probably about 16, 17, I started getting into death metal. And I've been into black metal. I've been in a black metal, heavy metal band, again, edgy 13, 14-year-old. I played bass guitar.
I was about to ask, what did you play?
play bass. If I can find it, I've got an old photo of us, a black and white photo. We went to a local graveyard and took like these
nice.
emotional, emotive photos. I've got long hair. I used to have long hair. But yeah, I'll put a photo up if I can find it. But then I got into death metal and found out some bands I really liked: Napalm Death, Carcass, and Bolt Thrower. Right, all three British sort of like early grindcore death metal bands, and also happened to kind of align with my political leanings at the time. They were strongly invested in animal rights. Being on the left of the spectrum. We'll leave it there, because I don't want to piss people off by talking politics, even though whatever. So all my things were kind of coming together. Now, I'll touch on how Warhammer plays into that shortly, but that led me down this path of being really interested in history, and then from there into philosophy, with the politics merging into it as well. So I took philosophy at university. I didn't do great. I spent most of it drinking and doing other things that you probably do as a 18 to 20-year-old that you probably shouldn't be doing. But whatever. Then after
we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. I'm not going to leave myself open.
Fill in the blanks, everyone.
Yeah. So after that, I left and I went into education, basically, like helping kids with learning difficulties is what I got into originally, and I really enjoyed it, and I really found value in it for myself, in essentially in helping people that could do with some help. Then one thing led to another, and I met my wife and moved over here to the US in my early 20s, about 23, 24. And been here we got married a couple of years after that, and I've been here ever since we got married. And yeah, like I say, now I work in IT for a megacorp, basically, and just a working Joe, man. Just I clock in and I clock out, and that's as far as I'll go with that one. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about my background, and you can infer what you want from that. If you're interested, you can ask. I'm not shy about talking about stuff, but I won't go into a diatribe right now. But yeah, that's a little about my kind of history and background, I guess.
Super interesting, dude. Yeah. I mean, again, like we were saying, like the amount of parallels, it's all there. Yeah. So like, I guess in that same vein, aside from Warhammer and 40K and stuff, like, what have been or are kind of like your main hobbies apart from that?
Yeah, so I've always been a gamer, traditionally a PC gamer, but I mean I've had Xbox 360. I've got a PS4 right now. I haven't dropped any money on the latest gens yet, because other things to spend money on right now. But yeah, I've always been a gamer. Like I said, RTS has always been my big thing. I've played Total War games since literally day one. I got Shogun Total War the day it released. I was so excited for that because it came out a little bit after Red Alert 2, and I'd just sunk so many hours into Red Alert 2. I was like, I need something else. This looks interesting. Okay, here's one you may not remember. When Rome Total War came out, there was a show on BBC Two called Time Commanders. Does this ring any bells? Okay,
Dude,
it's gonna
no.
it's gonna be the 30-year-old plus Brits that remember this. Basically, they use Rome Total War to have like teams of 4 people play against like the AI, simulating historical battles, like whatever. And me, I convinced some buddies, and we applied to be on it. Okay, I really wanted to be. Didn't make it, but we got through to like the top 3 that could, go and be on there. I think it was on like the reserve list for a little while, and then they shut the show down. So unfortunately, never met. But dude, that was like my thing. I really wanted to do it because I love, like I said, strategy games, and I love to be the best at them. I really want to, not in a dick way. It's a challenge against myself. I want to be good at these things. I want to know that I can solve these strategic problems. It's just something I'm really interested in, tying into like the historical nerdery, I guess. Big fan of like historical generals and things like that. But I also like FPS games, big fan of the old Battlefield games, not so much the more recent ones, but like 1942, Vietnam, and Battlefield 2 and 2142. The amount of hours I've got in those games is probably illegal in some parts of the world,
Oh man, those games slap though. Like
yeah.
I remember like when I was a teenager too, like Bad Company 2 came out.
Yeah.
And man,
oh yeah.
That was the game, Yeah. I was like, whoa, I can destroy buildings.
Yeah. I love the Battlefield games.
Yeah, so good.
I'll still pick them up when they come out. As you get older, your twitch reflexes decline, and you can't be as competitive in those sort of things. Yeah,
I'm not there yet, so
yeah, you can still enjoy it. Like for me, it's more, that's something I have to be a bit more casual about.
Yeah.
But most of my brain still works well enough for me to do like Warhammer and stuff.
I hope so.
Yeah, right. Again, those teenage years, they come back to bite you eventually. Flashbacks, but yeah. Other than that, like I spent several years from like my late early 30s up until pre-COVID, lifting, like weightlifting, basically. Really enjoyed that. I'm about 50 to 60 pounds of COVID weight. Is 100% what it is. Just COVID. That's the only.
All. Yeah,
that's all it is.
The gyms were closed. So what are we supposed to do?
And honestly, I mean, I should have gone back, a few months ago, as it started to get safer, and they were like, I've still got to do it. But that's also something that has been very important to me, certainly over the last sort of like 7 or 8 years of my life. Big parts.
Yeah, I remember you had that video a while ago about like tying the sort of like weightlifting aspect of like that into like 40K and stuff.
Yeah,
man, I that was before I joined the channel. I love that video so much. I was like, yeah,
like I think there's a lot of concepts, like training concepts. It's not just weightlifting. There's any like training as a whole. It's obviously more money is put into it sports wise because there's huge money, certainly in the USA, in sports. So there's a lot of research and development into effective ways of training your body and mind into being a good athlete. And there's a lot of those concepts which I genuinely feel can carry over to competitive 40K. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them do carry over, like the practice methods, what you do on your downtime, the importance of downtime, of literally not doing 40K. Things like that I think are important. Other than that, I love reading. I love watching movies. I really like my classic movies as well. I love old Japanese stuff like Kurosawa movies. I'm a huge fan of like the Seven Samurai and Yojimbo and stuff like that. Yeah. I love my old war movies. I love sci-fi movies. Anything from like horror, sci-fi, like Alien, the Alien franchise, anything. I just love a lot of stuff, and it's generally nerd based. It's something where you can be obscenely fanboy about, right? Whether it's horror movies or whatever. TVs, dude, I love a lot of stuff. Like if you just get an archetype of a nerd, I slot in right most.
I feel that, yeah.
Comic books, comic book movies. You know, when I was a kid, and like as you talked about when in our last video, where you went to Barcelona and seen the like the scout trooper in the window or whatever of the hobby store. For me, when I was a kid and got my pocket money, I used to go to a little place in where I grew up in London, and they'd sell old Marvel comics, 10 for £1. And I got £2 pocket money a week, like one from my parents and one from my grandparents. And I'll just buy 20 old Marvel comic books, and I've still got them in a box, like, well, most
nice.
And
that's cool.
yeah, I'll do, and then I'll buy Star Wars figures, stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, always been a nerd, happy about it, proud to be it. But there was a period of time where I pretended to not be a nerd, you know.
Right, yeah, you have to be cool. You have to be cool.
Sort of like 15 to about 20 age time, it's like, oh yeah, I just like to go and drink. I'm a cool dude.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's that like kind of development thing that I think a lot of people go through. But you know, I'm really happy to kind of see that I guess like the modern kind of state is a lot more encouraging for like nerdy fandoms and stuff, and like it's kind of cool to be a nerd now. You know, there's so much like great nerd culture out there, and like everyone kind of wants to be kind of part of it and stuff. You know, because it's really engaging. Like you said, it's like people get drawn into it, and yeah, I just hope that like, you know, people growing up now would have an easier time of it than us, where it's like you feel like you can't engage with those things that you want to because you have to be cool. Like you said, it's like, oh, have to like go out drinking and like play, you know, like hardcore music and all this kind of stuff, or like get really into sport and stuff. It's like it's not really that vibe anymore, and it's nice to see things develop that way.
Well, we can thank the internet for that. I think you know, you basically being a millennial, me being right there on the cusp of Gen X and millennial. I classify myself as a Zennial because I don't want to be. But
if I started calling you a boomer,
no, I'm nowhere near a boomer. Hell no, I'm right there on Gen X. But you know, we grew up, or I certainly grew up. Remember pre-internet days, and like your very early life was probably you know, like
for sure. Yeah, I remember the first time we got internet. Yeah,
right. So, but then, you know, like people like my kids' age and, you know, like Gen Z and whatever have grown up in this and are open to the whole world. And with the popularity of even things like Warhammer or the MCU, all the things that are like satellite nerdery, right, and are just huge money makers and are plastered all over the internet. Well, like, this is a valid way to devote your relaxation time, your respite, your expendable income, or your days off, your weekends. You don't have to be you know, going to the pub when you're 16. You can go to the hobby store and hang out with your mates. There is no bad thing about that, like what we grew up with, like this thing, oh, you know, I guess I'll put my Warhammer models in the closet for 5 years because, you know, I don't want people to think I'm a geek or whatever.
Yeah, like you'd be like almost scared of like if someone comes over and they see them, you know, and you'd be like, oh, like have to explain them and stuff.
Yeah,
it's so interesting how it's like flipped to being like people are like so proud of their hobby now.
Yeah,
I love to see it. It's like personally, it's very fulfilling for me to see that. But yeah, like definitely for yourself, and like I get that too, where it's like those OG days where it's like, I mean, like, I don't think it's a stretch to say you would be embarrassed of having those hobbies, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And well, so, all right. So let me talk about how I got into Warhammer, because
I was about to say,
it ties
natural
directly
segue,
into that. So I can't remember the very first interaction I had was, I was probably about 8. So this is the late 80s. Right, and my aunt and uncle bought me a box of Skeleton Warriors, the old Warhammer Fantasy Battle Skeleton Warriors. It was like a big ass box with like 10 sprues in it or something, and I never built them. I would stare at that box art and stare at the sprues and think, this is like the greatest thing ever. What do I do with it as an 8-year-old? Like my parents both, were working 2 jobs full time, like because that was, how I had to grow up. But me and my brother would like stare at this box and, man, this is so cool. But we never could really get into it. But it was there. There was something out there in the world that I wanted to be part of or be involved in. Then a couple of years later, probably like 10, 11, got into Warhammer Fantasy, the High Elves, because there was a hobby store near where my grandparents lived, and I'd spend almost every weekend at my grandparents. And I'd walk out with my nan and would, help her with the shopping and stuff. And I'm like, can I go in there, Nan? It looks so cool. Oh yeah, go on. Here's a couple quid, And I'm like, oh, thanks. Couldn't buy anything in there with it, but
what are you supposed to do with £5 in a Warhammer store?
Yeah, I can pay to look at the models with that. But go in, and eventually I'd saved up birthday money and pocket money and whatnot, and bought a set of. I can't remember. They were like basically the line troops for the High Elves at the time, and the
oh yeah, I remember
the
those
old
guys.
equivalent of the whatever they used to call the War Scroll or the Codex, Battle Tome or whatever the old fantasy Codex was, right? For the High Elves, no idea why. Maybe the store, the store manager, or whatever, just sold it to me. I don't know. It just sounded cool, and I built them. I didn't paint them, but I built them. And like would play toy soldiers. My brother would get his action men or whatever, and we'd just play toy soldiers each other.
Action man versus 10 High Elves doesn't seem like a very fair matchup.
Oh, then we'd get like a toy aliens and Venom and stuff like that in there. Whatever, monster mashup. And then about the same time as that, I can't remember if that happened first or one of my brother's other friends. His dad was super into Warhammer Fantasy, and he brought over a table and set up an entire like old school, 1990 era fantasy battle on our kitchen table. I didn't play, but I just stared at it. I was like, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing. This is so cool. So freaking cool. But didn't really ever actually properly play fantasy. Had like a couple little skirmishes. Like a friend of a friend played and kind of taught me some rules when I was about 11, but that was about it. Then around the same time I was getting into like Red Alert and stuff, right? Me and my brother were in central London, I think Tottenham Court Road, and it was just the two of us. Like we went up there for the day or whatever, and we went into the old Games Workshop store, Warhammer store, whatever, in Tottenham Court Road in central London. And I'd started working every Friday night. Of course, for legal purposes, this never happened because, couldn't do it. But I worked for Cash in Hand every Friday night when I was 13. And had a little bit of money. I'd make about 20 quid every Friday, and then I'd work every other Wednesday night, getting extra. So, I had a bit of money. And it was either going on Iron Maiden vinyl, or when we went to the Games Workshop, I was like, man, this shit's great. So I bought the Metal Khorne, Metal Abaddon, a single Chaos Biker, and I think like there was a blister of maybe 2 Terminators or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And like me and my brother, I was like, hey, dude, pick out a couple models. I'll pick out a couple. Let's just do this shit. He's like, okay, it's cool. So we bought this stuff. We went home. I think we bought like a starter box of paints as well. And built them. I vaguely remembered trying to use like PVA glue to glue them together, because it just said you glue the models together. I didn't know like how basic can you be with your initial hobby, right? You're just like pouring fucking PVA. It's not working. Why ain't it working? Oh, go and steal Dad's super glue. It'll be all right. So anyway, we got the models built and painted them really badly. It's just amazing. Just absolutely loved it. And they just sat on the shelf, and eventually bought some like Marines or something and like tried playing a bit, bought the rule book at the time, which early 90s, I don't know if we were in second edition at that point, probably second, maybe third. I don't know when the edition changes because I didn't pay attention to it then. but it was certainly post Rogue Trader. I think has to have been because Abaddon was out and Khorne was out, so early 90s sometime, whatever. But then, of course, I became cool. I was in a heavy metal band. I was, able to get served in the pub.
Dude, I'm sorry, that was so funny. I became cool.
Yeah. I had long hair. I
someone
used to
needs
put
to
on, like,
animate
the
a
corpse
gif of
paint.
that.
I'd have the white and black corpse paint on.
Yeah.
I had my bass decked out and stuff. Dude, badass. But yeah, so for the next sort of like 5 or 6 years through school, college, then university, I was doing the other stuff. But like you, whenever the first Horus Heresy dropped, which was real early 2000s, I want to say it was like 2001 or 2 even. I know it was right there early doors. So I would have been either in my last year of uni or just out of it. I remember being in like a Waterstones or something like that, some of the big bookshops. And, I was reading a alternate history sci-fi series at the time. And I was trying to find the last book because this is like when Amazon was just a book retailer, but they didn't have like much stuff. It's like early days of Amazon. They didn't have what I needed. So I was like, I'll go to every bookstore in central London and find this book I needed. So I'm in like the fantasy sci-fi section or whatever, and I walk past the Warhammer shelf. Okay. So I'm looking, I was like, man, this art's cool. I read the back, I read the blurb in the beginning. I was like, all right, it's on. So I bought the first, I want to say it was only the first 2 books of the Horus Heresy were out at the time. And I think I got the Eisenhorn omnibus. I don't know, the lighting's probably bad, but I got all my books on the shelf back there. And whenever this is early 2000s, I was like, and from there I'm like, okay, this is it. Like I'm into this, but only on the reading side. Like, so from the early 2000s, whenever it was, it could have been as late as 2005. I honestly can't remember at this point. I know I still lived in the UK though. Every time a Horus Heresy book dropped, I'd buy it and read it. Then, I got into like the Gaunt's Ghosts and Ravenor when they came out, and just anything I could consume. I was like on Bolter and Chainsword and, all the media that was there. But this is obviously probably 6th, 7th edition when all this is going on. I don't know, earlier than that as well. And then I came to America, carried on. And then right at the end of 7th edition, my wife, my wife, my kids were on a little weekend away in Cincinnati, southern part of Ohio, right? We just like rented a hotel for a few days just to get away. And we was doing in a shopping mall or something, and they had their Warhammer store. And like my daughter was, I don't know, like probably 4 at the time. No, older than that, probably about 6. And I'm like, let's go in this store. And she's like, okay, let's go in here and have a look around. Okay, looks like toys. She's fine with it. We go in there and it's like, oh yeah, okay. I'm a grown ass man now. I'd recently changed jobs, so I was earning decent money. So daddy's dropping some money. So I'm like, why don't you look, darling? Why don't you have a look around and see what looks cool to you? So she's walking around and like I'm looking and
you're like piling the shopping cart up with like everything on the shelf.
Wasn't that bad. I mean, I was doing all right, not Warhammer all right though. And I can't remember, like I was looking at stuff, and obviously like the store guys, like, hey, can I help you with anything? And I'm like, I'm just looking. And my daughter's over by the orcs, and she's just like, oh, these are so cool. I'm like, they're pretty cool. She's like, can I get some? I was like, well, like I'm looking at the price. I think, well, I've still got to buy us dinner tonight and stuff like that. And they had the Battle for Vedros set, which was like a mini starter box with push fit Marines and Orcs. Came with like a Dreadnought, a Terminator, a regular attack Marine squad, and then a set of Orcs. I was like, why don't we buy this? And we can play a game and see how it goes. She's like, okay. So I did, bought that, enjoyed the rest of our weekend. Following weekend at home, I put all the models together and me and her played a game and she kicked my ass. I was like, this is like great. I love it. But this is still in seventh edition. Sorry. And so I start looking up online because you only got like a pamphlet with very basic rules. So I was like, how do we play this properly? What do I need to get? And it must have been that week or that month, 8th edition had either been announced or had dropped. I was like, oh, okay, so we got new shiny models coming out. We've got Primaris Marines. Okay. So as soon as the 8th edition dropped, I bought it. And then I sold all the stuff because I decided I didn't want Primaris Marines. I wanted Old Marines. I was kind of confused over what the stuff was, but I kept the rule book and then I just sold all the stuff. I think I sold the Nurgle to a buddy around here. Basically, I made my money back on the box. That's all it was. I just, I didn't at that point, I wasn't selling to make any money. It was just like, I don't want these models. I want to play old school tactical Marines, Raven Guard. That's what I want to play. So then I started buying all that stuff and I built up probably about 3,000 points of Raven Guard and it was super fun. Played my first few games against, buddy around here who has been playing forever and kept losing, but I was having a great time. Like I was learning the rules and stuff. I actually painted all my models. Like I would only play with painted, as terrible as they are or were. And but I found that every time I played, I ignored the shooting phase. I didn't really care about like bringing a librarian. I just wanted to get my Vanguard vets with lightning claws into combat. Everything was built around running, and this is early 8, so they weren't like super good units. I didn't care about the competitive edge of this list. I wanted dudes with jump packs and huge lightning claws to get in and just mince up, the cog boys or the bugs or whatever I was fighting against. That's all I cared about because I just loved rolling all those dice in the fight phase.
I think that leads us nicely into
yes, it does.
Yeah, the natural progression of why World Eaters then?
Yeah.
Or have you answered your own question?
Well, that was kind of the start of it, right? So I played, probably about half a dozen games with the Raven Guard. Maybe I won a game or something, but nothing special. But I was like, man, like this, I love the army. I've always loved the Raven Guard anyway in the lore. I really like Korax as a Primarch and stuff. Of all the Loyalist Legions, they're my favorite. But it wasn't gelling for me. Like we talked about in your video, there's that moment, right? There's that connection we make as a player to a faction, and even if we don't always play that faction, they're our faction. That's our. It's like if you're
it's the one that calls to you.
Yeah, like I'll always support Liverpool, right? As a soccer team, I don't really follow footy anymore because it's hard to access it over here, but I'll always check up on the Reds and see how they're doing and stuff like that. And when I talk to my parents or my dad, at least, I'll be like, hey, you seen any games recently? I always follow them. They're my team no matter what. And likewise, as I realized the Raven Guard were fun, they weren't quite my team. I thought back, I was like, you know what? What's going on with Khorne? Because he was probably the first model I actually picked up and bought for 40k, even though I bought like a few of them at the same time. He was the one like, this mofo just got big ass axe and a plasma pistol, and he just looks so angry. And he's called the Betrayer because he kills his own dudes. I mean, that's pretty epic. Like it's stupid, but it's epic. So, and then obviously I've read the Horus Heresy, and up to this point, I want to say Betrayer was out, and I'd read it, and I'd just been following along with all the lore. I was like, okay, so I love World Eaters back then. And I'd picked up a few of the old metal World Eaters models and stuff. I was like, they're fighty guys. They like a good ruck, and that's the bit. All I want to play is the fight phase. I just love the fight phase. It's like the mini game within whatever. I just want to play that. So I was like, all right, let's look at them. So I start collecting boxes and stuff, and I go on eBay and find someone selling like 20 berserkers for $5 or something stupid. I was like, all right, here we go, it's on. So I started collecting World Eaters stuff, and I still have my Raven Guard, and I had a little bit of some Inquisition stuff I was building up on the side. But then the hooks were in, and I was like, this is it. This is my army. It clicked. Everything kind of fell into place. It's like the old school, the first model is like, oh, like that, the light shining from Khorne's blister pack or whatever. And the attachment I'd felt to them in the Horus Heresy books, and just my affinity for the fight phase and just the fun I had in it. I was like, this is the right choice. Let's just go back to what we know, or what I started with in a way. And so I did, and just kept building up my collection, building it up, buying more stuff, started getting Forge World stuff. This is before I was even remotely considering competitive play of any sort.
I thought you were going to say before you remotely knew me, because as we all know, I'm the Forge World shill, and you were buying it before then.
Oh,
so
yeah,
don't blame me for that.
like I was, it was just like, wow, like I could get a Charybdis. This thing is like this big, and it's a drop pod that fights. Hell yes, I'm getting that shit.
Dude, you know, like the best thing about like getting back into the hobby is when you're like at our age though, it's like, you know, it's probably exactly the same for you. You know, when you're like a kid and you go on the Forge World website and you're like, yes, it's all unattainable.
Yeah.
And then you get back in and
$200,
like genuinely, yeah. And then you get back into it and you're like, yes, it will all be mine.
Yeah. I'm like, you know, like obviously right now still in the process of moving house, but you know, once I'm get back to being, you know, financially level, it's like if I just work one extra day this week, it'll be overtime. I can put half of that in our savings, and I'll still get like $200 or $300. Forge World.
I mean, I measure my hours and how much resin I can get.
It's true, man. It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, that brought you into the world, man. It's like it's so cool to see like the parallels, you know. And
yeah,
I reckon I'm going to go out there on a limb and guess that this probably resonates with so many people who are watching.
I would think so. Yeah.
And I think you just nailed it when you said, like, you know, the light shining out. And it's like you have that moment where it's literally like the puzzle piece fits, and you're like, "Yep, that's the army." That probably happens for everyone else with like all the other armies, all the other different races you can play. You know, you have this moment where you're like, "This is the one." You know, this is my army for whatever reason.
Yeah,
it's really cool, dude. Yeah, really, really interesting to hear. So I guess like going on from there, so you know, you've gotten into the World Eaters, you've started building up your collection and stuff, and time's going by. And like, I guess like, you know, you kind of mentioned getting into like the competitive side of things and stuff, but what kind of brought you to the decision that you were going to start the Red Path? Because like, you know, that's a really interesting decision to have to make, I think.
Okay, yeah. So back before DZTV started, right? Winters and Liam from Warhammer were their own separate things. They started collaborating. I followed them both. And Liam, Warhammer, you know, one half of DZTV for anyone who doesn't know, or, you know, one of the leads, had a Facebook group. He started the original World Eaters Facebook group. Not the one that we're in. Yeah, not the one we're in now, but the one that
other one. I know. Yeah.
I think it's called like 40K World Eaters Legion or something.
Yeah.
He started it, and like, so I kind of found my way there because I was a World Eaters player. He wasn't very active on it, but he was there, and you know, started talking and stuff like that. And one of the first things I did, because I was really enjoying playing World Eaters and I was interested in getting into competitive stuff, even though back then in early 8th edition, World Eaters weren't competitive. It was just a fun army, right? One of the first things I did was like, hey, everyone, let's get together and try and work out what the best World Eaters list is, because I'm in that early stage of understanding competitive and thinking it's just about the list. So started a sub Facebook group called Project Kill Main Burn, right? And we all joined it, and we was like analyzing unit by unit, trying to find out how to make the best World Eaters. Didn't really go anywhere because that's not how it really works. But it was the first step on a process for me of like, okay, how do we start big braining this faction? Well, there was some stuff going on because Liam obviously went off to do his thing, and he kind of relinquished control of the group to a couple of mods and left and started doing, full-time 40K. So then the mods that we had were completely inactive. So a bunch of us said, screw it, let's start our own Facebook group. So we started the World Eaters Legion, which quickly overtook the old one, and everyone came over there because we were active. A few months into that, I was like, similar to yourself, we keep getting these questions. How does the fight phase work? Can I activate twice back to back? All the same things, like how should I equip my berserkers? And it's, there are best answers for a lot of them. Not all of them are 100%, but there are, here's what is probably best, unless, you've got a rule of cool reason otherwise, which is
experienced answers, you could say. Yeah.
So I wrote my first Tactica, I guess, Path to Slaughter it was called. And I can't remember the exact content of it. I think it was comparing how to play World Eaters like the swing of an axe, like from deployment.
I remember that one. Yeah. That was great. That was really good.
I put a lot of thought into it. I was like, it just kind of works in a cool way. The raised axe, the swing, the bite, all the whatever, right? And like you said with yourself, the feedback was really amazing. Like I was thinking I'd get, like a few thumbs up, good job, but you spelt this wrong or whatever. The typical internet response, right? Fully expected it. But it's like, dude, this is so cool. Thanks for putting the time into this. Angry react, angry react, angry react. Because obviously an angry react is much better than a heart react. So it was like, for me, it was validating. It was like, okay, so obviously I know a little bit of something, not being, I think I've done an RTT, some competitive games with, local players, but I certainly wasn't competitive in any sense of the word, but I understood how to get myself thinking on the path to become competitive. So that Tactica became a thing, like every 2 weeks or every week, I'd write an article about something, how to best use transports, how to equip your berserkers. Here's the FAQ for, fighting twice, whatever. And as that went on for about a year, and then sort of near the sort of tail end of 8th, you made the transition from being just basically on Reddit to also posting your stuff on the Facebook. Round about that time, I want to guess. And
yeah, I think that's it. Yeah,
it's somewhere like that. I know it's pre-9th. And from then, I'd had a few comments, oh, you should put this on YouTube. You should make a YouTube channel. I was like, yeah, but that just sounds like effort. It just sounds like work. And I was like, if anything in my life I dedicate maximum energy to, it's to doing the least amount of work possible. I literally told my boss yesterday, I was like, dude, I'm probably your best employee because I'm the laziest one. Because I'll guarantee you, if you've got a problem, you give it to me, I will find the most time-efficient way of solving that problem and putting the least amount of effort into it and getting it right. And dude, I will shortcut the shit out of anything. I had a car held together with duct tape for a week. It's
streamlined is the word I would say. Yeah. Streamlined.
But yeah, no. So people kept saying, "Do YouTube channel." I was like, it'd be kind of cool, but it is effort, and is there much point in catering to a couple hundred people at the time? I was like, you know what? Why not? So after a few months, I'd kind of done a bit of research online, how to start a YouTube channel. What do I need to buy? And it's kind of, to start off, it's not that bad. To grow, it gets bad, but to start off isn't bad. If you got a microphone and some editing software, you can pretty much start off. So I was like, fuck it, let's do it. So I did. I made the first couple of videos I pre-recorded. Anyone watching, go back to the first few videos of the channel. We get comments every now and again, oh, you need to increase your production value and stuff. I'm like, okay, I mean, I work a full-time job. Dara works a full-time job and is, pursuing an education. I've got a family. Sure, I'll just go ahead and blow another $1,000 on up in the production value and sleeping only 2 hours a night instead of 4 hours a night. Sounds like a plan.
It's tough. Yeah, it's
It
tough.
is. But
because like we're at the end of the day we're doing this out of love and out of love
Yeah.
for the hobby and everything. So yeah, it can be challenging sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's about the love.
Yeah, it's this is I think it was you that said like the hobby within the hobby.
Yeah.
And it is, because at the end of the day, we've got our personal lives we need to take care of first. Our work, our family, relationships and stuff. Then it's about taking care of ourselves, which for us is playing 40K a lot of the time, or video games or whatever, or painting. It's our self-care, right? Then after that is the channel. And we both dedicate a lot of time to just produce 20 minutes of content. Sometimes can take 8 to 10 hours, quite frankly. So anyone who's like, oh, you need to up your production value, okay, drop us a check for 10 grand and you will see this channel drastically improve.
Please do, if someone wants to do that, actually. Yeah,
right.
100%.
But this is done on the spare time shaved off of our spare time. But if you look back at my first videos and then go jump 10 videos every time, just watch 20 seconds of each video and jump 10 videos, you will see a drastic improvement, because those first videos are fucking terrible.
Hey man, I love them.
Dude, I watched one just to have this, to look at progress, and I'm talking very monotone in a voice like this, and there is no background sound and the microphone, and but okay, first couple videos, whatever. And these are things you learn, but it is a journey, and really my competitive love and desire to play competitively has kind of come with the channel. The channel being like the catalyst moment of, okay, I'm going to give myself a platform and I'm going to try to provide the best knowledge I'm able to help World Eaters players out. May not always be right, and quite often is wrong. I'll take the correction, and you know what? As I've done a couple of times, I will post a video correcting myself for a fuck up I did make, which, I'll own my mistakes. I'm not worried about that. But as the channel has gone on, we're coming up to a year down the line from the first video. I feel that has spurred me on to push myself competitively, and between the Latara Sarin, between, our LVO and Coventry and Manchester, depending on how all that goes, between, getting some seriously strong players, whether, someone like Mark or Mike, who's toying with running some World Eaters, or, like all the other folks who are engaged in our community. I'm like, okay, we can do this shit. We can be involved in changing the meta, or influencing the meta. Not in a way where we're like Art of War, where we're taking 5 of the top 10 spots at majors. No, because we can't do it with the tools we have. I know a bad workman blames their tools, but I mean, look at the codexes that are winning and then look at ours. It's right now, it's not happening, right? But we can prepare. I want, aside from our focus on charity and being good ambassadors for the hobby and being good humans, right? And treating everyone with respect and dignity and equality. Aside from that, the next most important thing for me is making World Eaters respected and feared. As right now, as an 4-year-old codex, as an 8th edition codex, I want, after the LVO, I want to have put my name on the map. I don't expect a top 100 placing at the LVO, but I want to go up against someone good, and I want them to say, dude, you lost the game, but how the hell did you hold me back? You imagine facing off against, Nick Nanavati or John Lennon or something. You're going to lose the game. But you're going to play for your points like you should as a good competitor. And whilst those guys are probably a little familiar because of Mark Perry, I want them to say, you know what, I thought I was going to take this 100 to 15, and you held me to a 90 to 30 game. That's kind of the thing I want. I want us, all of us World Eaters, to be able to go and make them just, okay, this is a game. This isn't me ruffle stomping on, going seal clubbing. This person's going to come and they're going to punch back. And that's kind of what I want for us, because Chaos Space Marines are in a bad spot. But I think a lot of that is because the player base has given up. And I don't want to be part of a team that gives up. Does that make sense?
I think it does, yeah. I definitely agree with you there. But in saying that, I think we have to a certain extent fostered a group who do not give up. If you take my meaning, and would probably agree with me on that one.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and that's been, I've done a few videos on like how I coped with loss, and that's also an aspect of like the Chill Game Learn videos. Is there are negative things in Warhammer, but we can be the thing that makes them, that gets rid of the negative and makes the positive, right? And the quitting mentality, and I'm not talking if someone leaves the hobby because they were bullied or something serious. I'm talking about, oh, my codex is trash, I'm going to go. Now, if you are a player that you get your kicks from playing the best faction, and you can afford to do that, I'm not dissing you. I'm saying, Chaos Space Marines are trash, so I'm just not going to play 40k for 6 months. Come on, man. Like, put up your fists. Step into the ring. You don't get good at this game by winning every game. If you're winning every game, you are learning pretty much zero. I think the majority of us that have played in RTTs or GTs or whatever, over where we've been able to, or even like yourself playing with your mates who are also competitive players, like running Drakari against you every week, you're a madman for doing it, but you know what, big respect. Because it's automatically a hard match, right? When you play your housemates Drakari, since the codex dropped, you are uphill all the way, right?
For sure, yeah.
So being able to do that every week or every month or how often you play, for any of us, I think is an important mentality to adopt, because
it refines you, as a player. I'm pretty sure you made that comparison before about how it like hones the blade, I think.
Okay.
In one of like a video ages ago. I remember like hearing that, being like, yeah, I resonate with that. But yeah, I think it allows you to learn, I guess, because like it's literally like you said, if you win every game, you don't learn anything.
Yeah.
But by losing, you find ways that you can improve and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely see that. And I think we are seeing that come through with, the people who are hanging out with us, the people who are chatting to us, they have that spirit, that like continuous fighting spirit, where it's like, yes, it might not be great right now, and it might be great next year, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what we can do,
Yeah, it's and I'll tie it off here with probably my favorite piece of lore, right? And anyone who's heard me talk about the lore knows this, but it combines everything together. I think, like, what I think we agree on the spirit of a World Eaters player is, or should be, plus, in my opinion, the most badass moment in all of 40k lore. It's Armatura. The World Eaters have been abandoned by the Word Bearers. They're off busy praying and doing their, shenanigans. And the nails have bitten. Khorne has been trying to hold the boys back, but you know what? YOLO. They charge the Ultramarines. The shield wall stands firm. They crash into them like a wave, and they're held back. And they've been withered by bolt of fire and everything else, and brought down in droves. And Khorne is up there, shoulder against the storm shield, or whatever the shield is the Ultramarines have got. And it's just our turn. And then it's just like he leaps over the line and just starts gutting the Ultramarines. You know, they're outnumbered 10-1 after being cut down and abandoned. And they don't give up. Like they for them, obviously, it's more of they don't care because the butcher's nails are bitten. But it's that we will take every piece of shit you can throw at us. And the second you let us have the opportunity, we are going to shove this chain axe in your guts and split you vertically down the middle and go on to the next one and do it again. And I think as a mentality, being able to commit to just keeping on fighting and keeping on killing Ultramarines is a sound way to approach life.
Specifically Ultramarines.
Specifically
it's
Ultramarines.
very, very important.
Yes.
They did a lot of bad things to us in the Horseheads.
They did, yeah.
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 I totally, yeah. That was like a very poetic and nice way, I think, of putting it. Damn, dude, yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, I think that really sums up my kind of journey from a wee lad, you know, getting into nerddom in general, touching on a bit of fantasy stuff, and then, you know, pretending to be cool when I was a teenager, to finally adopt or accepting the fact that we are who we are, and we should never have to feel ashamed of who we are, regardless of what that is in life. Whether you're a nerd or whatever it is, you should never feel like you have to hide who you are for anyone else. You should not be challenged for that. And I'm glad that society is adapting to being more accepting, nowhere near accepting enough, but we are slowly getting there. And I'm glad we're at least going forwards with our progress instead of being stagnant for the most part. But yeah, that's me, dude.
That was awesome. Yeah. So, you know, you've learned a lot about us now, guys. I hope it was an interesting one. Yeah, I hope it was interesting though. Fun to kind of talk about these things, and you know, hitting 2000, it's a big deal for myself and Jamie.
Yeah.
Especially like, I guess, like you were saying, you know, channel's coming up on its anniversary pretty soon. We got a lot of cool things in the pipe. I don't know if you want to drop any hints at the minute, but
well, I think we can definitely talk about the RPG or the role playing, right? Just a little bit. Like, why don't you just give us a brief spoiler, because it's already dropped in the Discord. So.
Yeah, so like a couple of things that we have in the pipe. We're thinking about doing a form of RPG, sort of Wrath and Glory style campaign with some folks, you know, kind of been hanging out with us for a while. Basically, I've got a little bit of a story in the works. I'll probably be GMing it, but yeah, that might be something that we're going to look at doing. I would say realistically next year at some point.
Yes,
like we have a lot of more immediate things in the pipe, but yeah, I mean, we got a lot of fun projects on the way. I think it's going to be a really interesting time. So for everyone watching, there's going to be some really cool stuff coming very soon.
Yeah, we've there's some stuff. You know, I talking to Mike P again, want to get him back on to talk about some real high level ways to write lists and stuff. And there's some other community people I want to reach out to, and so we can chat to and just get stuff. And yeah, you know, there's stuff you and I have talked about, Darren. It's like crazy good ideas. It's finding the time and the ability to make these things happen. But yeah, we've got a good year for the channel, people.
Yeah, there may be ways for a lot more people to be a bit of a part of the Red Path, shall we say? Yeah, we got some real cool.
There's a team concept that is being floated around.
Yeah. So, you know, like you were saying, get up there and push around with the Art of War boys. So keep an eye out. You know, we might have something in the more immediate future coming for that.
I would say probably in the next month or two. We're still ironing out details. But if you like competitive play,
and you like the Red Path,
and
that bounced so perfectly, I couldn't resist.
And I will say, you don't have to be a World Eaters player for whatever it is we're talking about. As you know, we've probably
more on that to come. But
yeah.
So Yeah, it could be a huge year for World Leaders next year in general. Could be a huge year for us here in the Red Path. And look, I mean, look, there's two pretty big hints dropped there. So
Yeah, I think let's
yeah,
leave it there. We don't want to give
let's
away
leave it
too
there.
much of our hand.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you take us away, man?
Yeah. As always, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for bearing with us. Thanks for subbing to the channel and all that. And until next time, it's been me. It's been Jamie. So stay healthy, stay safe, and kill Mainberg.